And there we go. We're now live, Amy, so we can go ahead and start the meeting. I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. Happy Thursday. We will call this meeting to order. It looks like it's right at 1 o'clock, which is perfect. The first thing that we will do is the approval of the agenda. I'm not sure if there were any questions. Derek did send out an addendum as well with two kind of updated points, one within the briefings and one within the business. There's an additional appointment to a project team. So if there's no questions, can I get a motion that the agenda will be amended to include the addendum and as amended be approved? If I can get a mover and a seconder, thanks. I see Emily and I also see Susan. And all in favor on that one? Thank you. I see hands. Perfect. The next one is the confirmation of our minutes from our last meeting, which was held on February 2nd of 2023. If there are any questions, comments, feel free to raise your hand. And if not, I'm putting forward a motion that the minutes of the MAC meeting number, I'm not sure if I have to include that, but number 01-2023 held on February 2nd be approved. And can I get a mover and a seconder? I see Dinah and Andrea, thank you. And all in favor? Perfect, hands, thank you. Next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Anybody does have that, this is your time to disclose. Again, I've never been in a meeting when that has happened. I'm still waiting for that moment. I don't think so. Number 5 is we also have no delegations for this meeting. And so we will jump right into our briefings. We have 2 of them happening today. And so each one of them, they'll be given kind of up to 10 minutes to talk, and then we'll take questions from the committee members through that. Each of them, there's also a report that's within the business section. So hopefully you've had a chance to read those reports because we'll kind of deal with them both at the same time because they are each dealing with the city staff. So with that, thank you to Luke, Director of Engineering Services, who is presenting on our update on transportation and public works.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you, Madam Chair.
With that, thank you to Luke, Director of Engineering Services, who is presenting on.
Apologies, everybody. I think there was just a bit of background playing there on the host's screen. So we're just going to wait a second for that to get settled and we'll let Luke go. So we did not step backwards in time there, although it did seem like it. So we'll just have a couple of moments here and then we'll get going. And I'm sure everybody things are working here in the background, so we're just having a bit of a delay. All right, and there we go. Go ahead and take it away, Luke.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Luke Falwell. I'm the Director of Engineering Services, and I'll be providing a briefing on the Transportation and Public Works update that's provided in your agenda today. Within Transportation and Public Works, we have...
And there we go. Go ahead and take it away, Luke.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, apologies. We still are getting this playback here that's happening. I'm not sure why that's happening. So maybe, Beth, I have the presentation. Maybe I can try sharing it. So let's give it a try from my end. Maybe my system's working a bit better.
Derek, I can also share the presentation from my screen if that
you know what,
helps as well.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that, Luke. I should be able to allow you to share. I just have to change that.
Sorry,
Okay.
Derek, I do think I have it ready to go. I just have to restart it with the slide changes.
Okay, I think the problem, are you getting Beth in the background? We're picking up the previous audio from the meeting. Is that running from, like, do you have the YouTube stream running in the background?
Yeah, I've been able to mute the app that's playing that in the background. It should be fine now. It's just that we won't be able to hear any of the music in the video that Luke would like to share. That's all.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead then, Beth. You share it again and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Yep, go ahead, Luke.
Okay, thank you very much. On behalf of the Transportation and Public Works Group, I'll be providing updates for transportation services, transit services, public works and solid waste services, corporate asset management and fleet, and engineering services. And then again, my name is Luke Falwell. I'm the Director of Engineering Services. Next slide, please. So on behalf of the transit department, we have been working on transit station improvements across the city. So on the slide in front of you, on the left is an image of a concept of a transit station that will be installed on currently constructed pads along Henderson Drive, which you see on the image on the right. So the first two stations will be arriving this spring, and the next phase of stations will be constructed as part of the Bay Ridge Drive rehabilitation project that I'll be talking about a little bit later for transportation services. So MAC project team members have been valuable in providing input on this project already, and we really greatly appreciate that. Next slide, please. So the city's first electric buses entered in 2021, and they were the first buses in Kingston to have the feature of the Q-Straight Quantum Automatic Wheelchair Securement System. And this system gives passengers independence to secure themselves with minimal assistance from the bus operator. The feedback received from passengers and operators about the system has been very positive. 6 additional buses were retrofitted with the same touchless system in 2022, and all new buses will have the same system installed on a go-forward basis. The 6 units installed in 2022 have real-time reporting, information available that monitors when and where the system is used. So the information will assist us in identifying where passengers using those devices and how we can improve service going forward. On the citywide active transportation routes, we are continuing to make improvements. The image on the left shows a conceptual visualization of Bay Ridge Drive with separated cycle lanes and improvements to multi-use pathways. The image on the right shows recent improvements that were completed along a multi-use pathway on Henderson Boulevard with tactile surfaces for pedestrians and cyclists moving through a controlled intersection. I think, there we go. So as part of community safety zones, 2 pilot locations were trialed in 2022. And moving forward, all school zones will be upgraded within the community safety zone. This includes signage, as we see in the pictures in front of us, and reduced speeds through those areas. Continual monitoring will take place, which will ultimately recommend further improvements to those community safety zones going forward. From a traffic calming perspective, the images on the presentation indicate centerline flexible bollards for traffic calming, speed notification devices, and additional signage where applicable for school crossings. We also have completed pavement markings at some intersections with additional flexible bollards to reduce traffic. 12 areas across the city will be upgraded in 2023 with additional traffic calming measures as recommended by council. Public Works and Solid Waste, from a winter control and maintenance perspective, improved and focused winter maintenance has been updated and improved at bus stop locations and also along sidewalks. So we have some pictures here today that show some of those enhancements during a significant winter control event. Further improvements will continue to be made in this area going forward. Sidewalk improvements continue to be implemented throughout the city where gaps have been identified and new construction activities take place. The image on the left shows a new sidewalk construction from Princess Street to the north where a gap previously existed. And also the picture on the right shows concrete sidewalk improvements near the Tourist Information Office on Ontario Street, where deteriorated sidewalks had been identified and improvements made where previous patching and repairs had been outlasted. We'll continue to do improvements throughout the city. On the park renovation side of things, we have play structures that are rehabilitated in their existing location or move closer to locations to improve accessibility. So here we see a picture of a concrete pad with an accessible picnic table, accessible entry into the play structure area, and a bench as well. Play features in those accessible play structures and parks are also taken into consideration as part of the annual renewal projects that are presented, and MAC team members are a valuable component to that. This is an image of a new park in Cataract Way West, which shows various elements that are currently under consideration as part of the public engagement, and MAC team members continue to provide input with elements providing various levels of accessibility throughout the consultation and ultimately implementation and usability of those elements, certainly on a play structure component, but also pathway improvements and other amenities within the parks that are being considered for new and upgrades at that time. Along our shoreline and waterfront, we have completed a number of projects. The image on the left shows Richardson Beach, which is down along King Street, and the image on the right shows a pathway improvement from Lake Ontario Park to Portsmouth Limerick Harbor with pedestrian upgrades and accessible seating and pathway improvements that were provided. And I'll provide some additional details at the end of the presentation. Dunham Park, we completed a pathway upgrade across a previous creek crossing, and we took the opportunity to improve not just the culverts, but also the pathway. So the images provided indicate the accessible pathway that was installed, but also the pathway improvements were not just part of the culvert rehabilitation, but went from one end of the park to the other, including some additional seating throughout that project as well. On a road reconstruction component, so not just the underground infrastructure is considered as part of those road rehabilitation. So in this image, you can see some sidewalk panels that were upgraded and crossing improvements that were made This is St. Lawrence Avenue down in the Queens area, but we also completed projects of this nature in Stephen Street and Stanley Street in 2022, with the road surface ultimately being rehabilitated at the same time. And if the presenter or the chair, Madam Chair, if you could click on the video, I will attempt to narrate the video of just some highlights of the work that was completed in 2022. And I believe the clerk had indicated the sound won't work, so I apologize for that. So this is an aerial image of Bay Ridge pickleball and tennis courts that were completed in this year. I'll just wait. It looks like it's. So there's a renovation of existing tennis courts and completed with upgrades to 3 existing tennis courts and 4 pickleball courts with an accessible pathway and benches that led to the pickleball courts in the back. Part of our road reconstruction and rehabilitation, we also completed improvements on a rural subdivision. This is Edenwood Estates, as we travel down the road with improvements to the road at that time. Additional improvements were made in our rural part of the network for Isla Man Road, as we show an image of some of that work. It's another image of a play structure upgrade that was completed at Star Reed Park. So not just the play elements that were upgraded, but also pathways and benches provided at the location to improve the accessibility and access. Turtle mitigation measures, although not specifically related to accessibility of human and mobility, but certainly from our turtle population and wildlife mitigation measures, we improved. This is out in Westbrook. McBurney Park in the image has a construction fence, which has subsequently been removed since the fall, but accessible improvements to the splash pad, the benches, and the park amenities as well. And just a more detailed aerial view of that location. Dunham Park, I alluded to this in the presentation, but it shows not just the culvert rehabilitation that was the driver for the project, but the accessible pathway improvements that were made leading through the park and connecting both sides of the neighborhood at the time of the construction project. Gardner's Road, this shows some of the road rehabilitation work, but also connections and gaps that were completed for the construction of sidewalks in the gap on the left of the image now, leading to bus stops and also at the intersection. Henderson Boulevard was a multi-use pathway project and shows the off-road cycling and multi-use pathway with intersection improvements, transit station pads that were recently constructed awaiting this transit station installation, and further sidewalk and multi-use pathway improvements throughout that connection. Richardson Beach, showing the shoreline and waterfront improvements with loungers and access down into the beach with ramps, but also transition steps down at the recently improved break wall that was added to the shoreline. And you can see some of those ramps in different locations for viewing and resting throughout that project. The building in the background is being rehabilitated at the same time and will open to the public later this spring. Portsmouth Olympic Harbor pathway improvements has come across with a new bridge that was installed to allow for winter control activities and the sidewalk plow to access the new bridge where the old bridge wouldn't allow for that due to width. And you can see a nice visualization of that here, but also improvements to the pathway, seating, resting areas. There was a steep portion of the pathway down near the Providence Care area that was meandered throughout the project to allow for an accessible slope to get from Portsmouth out to Lake Ontario Park. And further enhancements along the pathway were completed at the same time, along with some shoreline improvements that had been deteriorated since the more recent rehabilitation about 8 years ago. So there were just some general updates in rehabilitation that were completed at that time. And we'll continue to monitor those improvements and rehabilitations that were completed and make modifications and changes as we move forward. And I believe that is the end of the slide in the briefing. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you so much, Luke, for all the updates and information. Is there any questions or comments from any committee members? Lucy, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Luke. I am new to this committee, so the issue might have been raised before, but you've mentioned a few times about benches and places where people can rest, and that's one thing that I've noticed a lot. I am also new to Kingston, but sometimes the space is great, the paths are great, etc., but there's no place for me to sit down, and I walk with crutches, and I see older people too, or people with children, and I notice that there's not a lot of places to sit in Kingston in general. So if that's something that you could think about for future projects, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, and through the chair. So certainly as part of our public engagement and consultation, we receive specific feedback on the resting locations on the project. So there's certainly the opportunity to provide that feedback and for staff to try and incorporate that throughout the projects. On some of the more linear projects, it can be challenging providing resting every 50 meters, depending on the situation, of course. But certainly we have been providing not just the benches, but other seating or resting locations where we can, and certainly appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? Nicholas, I think I see your hand up.
Hi, Luke. Thank you for taking the time to give your presentation. There were just a few things I wanted to bring forward, as I know they directly relate to what you have been talking about and implementing, which is great, by the way. I love that this project is getting a lot of time spent and the development is moving forward. It's great to see. So just a few things relating to the, I think it was the traffic calming signs I'd seen, as well as the flexible posts. Mm-hmm. So while I love that there's ways of this being implemented, which is fantastic, I do have a couple concerns regarding those. I know they divide the traffic, so the going to and from traffic, and a lot of streets, especially the side streets, have not only the barrier in the middle, but they have the flexible posts on each side. I like it, but at the same time, that I've seen and I've been thinking about it over time, I found 3 problems with it. And as a direct result, that can cause interruption for accessibility, people with accessibility devices getting through on the sidewalk. So the first one would be street parking. As we know, as a result of those posts, people cannot park on the streets anymore. And as a result of that, they're parking on their driveway, which creates a barrier for people with accessibility devices to get around. So one or the other, I think, in my opinion, I don't know. I just have I hear back from a lot of personal friends and family with accessibility devices that have said this has caused an issue, especially in winter or during the rain or any other slippery time of year. So just something I wanted to make sure I passed along to you there. I know it also causes problems for snow removal. Some of the side streets, the plows cannot get through such a narrow space. And the third one is in the event of an emergency. If there are barriers and people have to pull over, then there's no room for emergency vehicles to get around. And the second one was I know part of your development projects include sidewalk maintenance and building paths to ensure not only people with bicycles or walking, but those with accessibility devices have an opportunity to use those paths as well. There's a lot of streets and sidewalks that don't provide that. And I'm just going to use the example of Bath Road, as we all know, by Armstrong, like just in front of the Frontenac Mall along the prison. Those sidewalks are not wide enough for two people to pass without accessibility devices, yet alone with. So if that's something that could be brought up at some point, I think it would be greatly appreciated from the accessible community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that feedback. I'll try and respond to a few things, speaking on behalf of our transportation department. So I'll certainly provide that feedback directly to them as well. So thank you for that, Nicholas. In terms of the flexible bollards on street, we are aware of challenges where we're introducing that, and some individuals are parking maybe immediately adjacent to it. So it impacts the road use. And then, as you've indicated, sometimes they then park in their driveway, blocking the sidewalk. So two things that we've tried to do is work with the homeowner and potentially move that bollard in some cases, and we can do that. But also educating them on blocking the sidewalk and the challenges and the issues with that, and trying to work with them to change their habits. So certainly those living on those streets have complained, but those in the adjacent streets have commented and complimented staff in terms of the impacts that they've seen in improvement from a vehicular speed perspective. But your comments are certainly valid and warranted, and I'll share them further. So thank you for that. And on the snow removal, typically the temporary bollards are removed in the wintertime so that plows can get by. So I'll need to take a look at the ones that are still in place that are impacting winter control operations. So thank you for that. And on the sidewalk width, the standards have definitely changed. You know, we've gone from a 1 meter wide sidewalk to a 1.2 to a 1.5, recognizing that we need 1.83 and even wider to allow for those in mobility devices to pass each other. So we're playing some catch up and implementing new standards as we implement new projects and do our rehabilitation, so that we can improve those areas and certainly the experience for all ages and abilities. So thank you again for the comments.
Perfect. Thanks for those. Dinah?
Hi, Luke, and thank you very much for the information that you've shared today. I have a couple of questions. One is with bike lanes and sidewalks. So one of the questions that I get a lot, and I wanted to bring to you, was in regards to different mobility devices, but especially anybody with a power chair or motor chair, is sidewalks versus bike lanes. And you may or may not be able to answer this one. Because a lot of sidewalks are not in the greatest of shapes necessarily. A lot of people tend to use the bike lanes for motorized wheelchairs, which often some people tend to not like that. And I'm wondering if there's actually anything that says bike lanes versus motorized vehicle / wheelchair / is there anything that the city says, no, they shouldn't be used for that over bicycles?
Thank you, Dinah, for the question. So our streets bylaw would, I believe, specifically restricts that type of device on the street. So yes, but staff have been directed to take a look at the streets bylaw and the activities that are taking place on the street. So it is something that we recognize, and certainly not just with mobility devices, but other things like electric scooters And certainly, electric bikes fall within the definition of a bike, but electric scooters are another thing that are very popular, and restricted use as well in terms of how the City of Kingston Streets bylaw currently is outlined. So it's something we're aware of, but at this time it is a restricted use within the street.
Okay, so just so I'm following clearly, the restricted use for the bike lanes is restricted not for chairs, or yes, for chairs as per the bylaw?
Yeah, right now you are not permitted to use your mobility device in a cycling lane that is on street. And I will provide the specific details in reference to that, Dinah, through the clerk, so that we can provide that response to the entire committee as well, to make sure that my interpretation of that is accurate indeed. But so I will follow up to ensure that it is accurate.
That's great. Another one that I wanted to mention was with the snow removal sidewalks and the bus stops. So right now, for instance, obviously a lot of the bus stops have sidewalks in front of them. So when someone is going to use a bus stop and can't get to the stop because there's a long sidewalk in front of them, what normally happens, right or wrong, is the person will go to the corner and wave the bus down. So what my personal experience, speaking from personal experience, is quite often the feedback from the driver is, I'm not allowed to stop here. I will this time. What's the alternative for accessibility?
Yeah, it's a great question. And certainly, so the minimum maintenance standards, and I don't have the exact answer, Dinah, in terms of what those options are, to be honest. I think, and I know that our transit operators are very accommodating and great to work with. So, I think that's the ultimate solution under the circumstances at this time, until we continue to improve those enhanced maintenance activities at bus stops, but also the accessible routes to get to them.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for those questions and comments, Dinah. Is there anybody else that has anything for Luke?
Amy, I believe Andrea has her hand
Andrea.
up.
Oh, Andrea, yes, thanks.
Hey there, can you hear me okay? Perfect. So thanks, Luke, for a great presentation. I'm actually kind of going to be building on something that Dinah was just talking about when it comes to accessibility with the sidewalks and transportation. So definitely with the city buses, it's one problem, but I work for an organization that works with individuals who need access for Kingston Access Bus. And it's become a really huge problem for us, but I'm hearing it from other people as well, because when the snowplows come along and build up all the banks along the snowbanks, suddenly we have a problem that the access bus can't get to us. Even when we take the time to cut out a pathway through the snowbank, the problem is that the access bus still can't get close enough to let off people with a wheelchair, especially some of the highly specialized wheelchairs for some of the individuals that we work with. And if the sidewalk that we're dealing with, I'm on Wellington right now, isn't being cleared because there's nobody actually tenanting the property next to us, access can't actually get our clients to us at all. So I'm really not sure what that looks like, but it's a really big problem because it means that suddenly we have a number of individuals that I know of that simply are housebound in the winter because there is no accessibility via transportation for them at this point.
Okay, thank you, Andrea, for that that comment, and I'll certainly provide that feedback to Public Works.
Great. Are there any other? Janice, yes.
Hi, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Continuing on the theme, Luke, of snow removal, I'm sure all of us, I'm sure you've heard it before, but I just thought I'd bring up, continuing on the theme is the the removal of snow beside handicap parking spots. It doesn't seem to be occurring, and I haven't been able to get out downtown. If I have to drive because I can't get out of my driveway, I try to drive, and then sometimes I can't find a spot where I can actually drop my ramp. So that would just be one area that I would bring up if it's not already on your radar. And I had another one in you know what else is a big problem is I find the sidewalks are being cleared, but similar to what Andrea said, it's impossible to go from sidewalk to street because of the banks that are everywhere. So you can go along ones, but you're completely, unless you have somebody, like I need to bring somebody to push me through the big banks that build up on the transitions. And I know you can't do this all over the city. It's almost impossible, but I would just raise it as an issue for sure that the slush gets piled up in mounds and then there's no way to go from street to sidewalk. And then also just a kudos, all the projects I've seen, witnessed, used a lot of the things, not all that you talked about, and the park upgrades, they're all, it's quite remarkable and fabulous. And it's great to see all the improvements around town, having been here for 20 years. So thank you for your presentation.
Great, and thank you for the feedback. And maybe if I could just follow up just for clarification on your first point regarding accessible parking stalls. That's in relation to side ramps and access directly to the sidewalk. Is that okay?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janice. Chantel.
Great. Can you hear me? Great. I just wanted to say, as like a quick mental health piece, I'm relatively new to Kingston. I'm from Victoria, British Columbia, and it's so beautiful there. And I just wanted to say that like watching the drone footage, it's so beautiful. And it's such an important aspect of community mental health. And I just wanted to say thank you, and that it looks really good.
Great. Thank you very much for that feedback. Appreciate it.
Okay, is there anything else from committee members? Okay, seeing none for committee members. So at this point in time, we do have a community member who is attending the meeting, who is given an opportunity. I see their hand raised.
I will, oh, sorry, Amy, I will
Go
go ahead and enable them. I'll just remind the community member, you have up to 5 minutes to make comments, ask questions. You have sort of get them out in that time, and if staff can provide a response after. So your microphone should be enabled. So whenever you're ready.
Yes, hello. Through you committee chair, I'd like to thank everybody for allowing me to contribute today. My name is Michael Judd. I spent a good bit, quite a few years disabled when I was a bit younger, back in the late 90s or early 2000s on Canadian crutches and having a very hard time of things. And I will probably head that direction again shortly. And I've noticed a few challenges in the city, but also a lot of really good things. And I'd like to make one comment along the lines of what Lucy made, I should say, in regards to sitting down when out for a walk. And that was always a challenge for me. And I'm having a hard time walking now. And when I go to try and exercise, I can find some spots in my area. I'm in King's Court, but every single spot where there is a bench, there is no shade. And there just seems to be a little bit of a disconnect between the few spots that we do have to sit and be able to actually sit in the shade in the summer, spring, and fall when it's hot. So not a big thing, but it's really important because it takes a lot of energy when you're not walking well or moving well to get out there and exercise, and then you have to bake in the heat. So not really a big thing. The city, I think, is doing a really good job in that, and especially with the parks. and I really appreciate that. I have noticed a small communication between the city and Utilities Kingston challenge. And recently I had to help somebody, and I'm having a bit of a challenge walking myself right now. I had to help somebody in a wheelchair out of a big hole that was left in the sidewalk. And but the Utilities Kingston did fix it very quickly when I pointed it out to them. And just little things like that. But as soon as you mentioned the somewhere to sit, I had to chirp in because yeah, this summer it was a challenge for me. And I always got tired where it was hot and sunny. And so it's hard to recover when you're baking. Anyways, thank you very much for allowing me to join in on this meeting.
Great, thank you, Michael. So with that, I think we are finished. Thank you, Luke, for joining us. And again, his full report was also included in business item 7B. It was just for information. So there's no motion or anything that we have to do for that one. So thank you, Luke.
Okay. Thank you very much. Enjoy the afternoon.
And so our second briefing of the day is going to be from, in the addendum, Amy, I should have remembered that name. Amy, Manager of Recreation Services, and Amy, also Manager of Recreation Facilities, and they are going to talk about program and special events updates. So you can take it away.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Yes, on the call with me is my colleague, Amy Elgersma, who is also the Manager of Rec Facilities, and I'm here to speak on the recreation programs through Rec and Leisure Services. Next slide. So the following slides will share with you some highlights within our recreation facilities, and we'll also highlight some of our special events that happened in 2022, and also share with you details regarding some plans that we'll take forward for our 2023 planning. So in terms of our facilities, all of our facilities in Vista, Artillery Park, and Kingston East Community Center, which we opened in March of 2022, are all fully accessible facilities. They all include fully accessible fitness equipment and change rooms. Artillery Park Aquatic Center. Artillery Park Aquatic Center had a renovation and opened in 2014 after that renovation. And through that renovation, we were able to add accessible ramp entries into both of our pools, both the therapeutic pool and our large tank. The therapeutic pool offers warm water therapy and a bubble bench. Within that therapeutic pool, we do offer adaptive programs and therapeutic swims 5 days a week. We have fully accessible fitness equipment, and the fitness equipment room offers spacing and seated capacity and seated positions for users in the fitness equipment space. We have accessible and universal change rooms that have a lift available, as well as an adult size change table. We have 2 aquatic wheelchairs available for use within the facility, and we also have a service dog hook on our pool deck. The Colligan Water Park, which is our outdoor water park that operates from early June till late September, has a gradual beach entry to the pool, also has fully accessible change rooms, a lift available, and 2 aquatic wheelchairs are also available at the outdoor aqua park. Next slide, please. I will pass this over to my colleague, Amy Elgersma, to share the update on the facility side.
Thank you, Amy. Yes, so the city operates 2 marinas, the Portsmouth Harbor, as well as the Confederation Basin, which is right in the downtown. Both of the marinas were operating at full capacity last year following COVID-19 restrictions and so on. And at both locations, each location has accessible docks available, and also accessible washrooms and showers on site for boaters. Moving on to the Cataraqui Community Center. This facility just recently completed accessible door opener project for some change room areas. So that was just completed. That's an older facility, but it's great that we were able to incorporate the accessible door opening devices. Next slide. Over to you, Amy.
Thanks, Amy. And next slide as well, please. So the Special Events Office is responsible for all municipal-led special events for the city. And in 2022, they delivered just over 8 external special events, and that included events such as Spring into Summer, Canada Day, Intercultural Arts Festival, New Year's Eve, Countdown, Snow Much Fun, and a soft and grand opening of the Waban Crossing. So within those events, always a priority is to ensure that all of our events are planned with everybody in mind, and specifically looking at using the accessible guide to events when planning all municipal events. Working with any of our external event coordinators as well to consider any accessibility considerations are a key piece when planning with our external events. So thinking about something like Blues Festival would be an external event, or like Poutine Fest would be an external event. All of those events would also be required to ensure they're accessible, even though if they're not planned by the special events team within the city. ASL interpreter services and assistive hearing devices were offered at most of the City of Kingston events. We were not able to have an ASL interpreter at one location on Canada Day just due to a shortage of support available around those services. We actually tried to source somebody right from Toronto, so we're not seeing that as an issue anymore. Accessible washrooms were provided at all of our events, both internal and external. Increased signage at all of our events, ensuring AOTA is used in all components of our printing. Accessible parking areas were identified and provided for all major city-run events, and also communicated through our event calendar. Next slide, please. So seating is a significant area of consideration when planning all of our events. So accessible seating and viewing areas were made available, specifically areas such as staged viewing at our Spring into Summer event that was held at Lake Ontario Park, a nice trial viewing area that was held at the Kingston Sheepdog Trials at Grass Creek Park. And cable protectors, using specific areas to ensure that the mats are properly used, protecting cable wires, and ensuring easy wheelchair walker accessibility around those venues for consideration as well for service dogs and capacity within there. Adequate lighting was provided to make items in space easier for vendors. So we did offer 6 different night markets in Springer Market Square throughout the summer, and ensured that there was effective lighting at all of those events or anything that took place in the evening. In the slide, you will see that is the grand opening of Waban Crossing. Next slide, please. So accessible doors at all city events held at all of our venues. In 2022, we did a little bit of a shift where we tried to bring some of our events into different communities. And so for Canada Day, instead of having a large event at Grass Creek Park, we actually hosted it at 3 different community centers. In this picture, you will see our brand new community center, Kingston East, and this is on Canada Day. And it's everyone wearing the red and white, and event promotion as well. All of our city web pages, posters, and general promotion events follow AOTA guidelines, plus our on-site signage that's available for everyone in attendance. accessible pathways. So events include pathways that are wide enough to accommodate mobility devices, service animals as well. We even started to add water bowls this year at our events to have fresh water available for service dogs. Height clearance free of branches or signs and that may not otherwise be detected. Transportation, so we offered free transit with accessible city buses to most of our events in 2022. We offered a shuttle service by community member for the Remembrance Day ceremony, as well as the Waban Crossing opening. Next slide, please. We also had escorts available to help wreath layers who required any assistance at Remembrance Day. We had some really strong collaboration in 2022 with our EDI committee and our EDI office. And that collaborative work was very thoughtful in planning to ensure we were looking at all of our attendees and finding ways to be inclusive and create a space of belonging. And that was, I think, really transpired in those events. This is a cool picture here. This is our K-Town countdown at our Vista Center that happened on New Year's Eve. And these are ice bumper cars for accessibility for those who could not participate in skating at that event. We also introduced some low-key areas, so really recognizing sensory issues for those that sometimes these events can be overwhelming. And so having some of these spaces to unwind and retreat. So we had separate coloring areas in spaces indoors at Kingston East, well, at all of our community centers on Canada Day. We also had separate areas during our K-Town countdown. Also some shaded area and just small spaces for picnicking at spring into summer. So just not always needing to have everybody in the hustle and bustle of all of those events. And more importantly, we took every opportunity at all of our events to seek feedback. So we had representatives from the special events team at all events with iPads, providing opportunity for the community to give us feedback on the event related to accessibility and accommodations, and received very positive feedback at all of our events this year. It's also exciting to acknowledge that the special events team, in collaboration with the Intercultural Arts Festival Committee, were recognized for a TRIP award. For those of you who aren't familiar, the TRIP award is an award provided by the city, and it represents the 4 core values of teamwork, respect, integrity, and pride. And the special events team was the recipient of that TRIP award this year for their work within the EDI components of that category. So really recognizing the importance of ensuring the inclusivity and belonging and finding space for everybody to want to be a part of our events at city-led events, but also making sure that when they come, they can participate and meeting all of those accessibility requirements. And that concludes our presentation from Rec and Leisure Services.
Perfect. Thank you both so much for that. And just as a reminder, their full report was in 7B business item, the program and special events update, which was for information only. Does anybody have any questions for the team? Feel free to raise your hand on camera or use the emote. Andrea.
Hi there. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to both Amy's. That was a really great presentation. I just had a couple of questions. I'm new to the MAC committee, so pardon me if this is repeating stuff that everybody else already knows, but the accessible guide that you spoke about to events, is that the Ontario accessible guide to festivals and outdoor events that you're referring to? Just for my own curiosity. I just had a question about the ASL interpreter services. Are you going through the Canadian Hearing Services for any of the interpreter services that you're looking for? Or are you working with somebody else? And then the last question that I had was actually in regards to one of the previous reports through Recreation and Leisure Services that I saw that as of 2017, that it was possible for staff to receive training in ASL. Is that just for Rec and Leisure staff, or is that for all city staff?
Thank you, Andrea, and through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so we are using the Guide to Accessible Festivals and Outdoor Events, the Municipal Guide. And second part to that question, in interpreter services, yes, Andrea, we were using local services through the Canadian Hearing Services. We were also using any actual sources that we could find, and notice that shortage was really within the sector right around the July coming out of the pandemic. We didn't experience it for any of our other events, and had no issues at all post around the July timeframe. And in terms of training, so subsequently from that, we thought, wow, this is a great opportunity, right, for us to leverage our internal supports. And one of our special events team assistant supervisors actually enrolled in the course and is actually just finalizing her certification. And we'll also have that now as a backup to make sure that we are never deficient in that area as well, and recognizing that, you know, we would be able to offer some degree of service internally if needed. Regarding, you know, if it's available to other city staff, I can't speak to that in terms of a training component through human resources, but I can't imagine why, you know, we wouldn't support anybody in learning and development of anything like that. So
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. I see a couple other people. Chantal?
There we go. Yeah, my stepdaughter, she's deaf, and I just wanted to note that my understanding, like I don't have like access to the stats or anything, but my understanding is that generally speaking, there tends to be more interpreters required than are available. Yeah, so I think that just given my understanding of the situation, it's actually really awesome what you guys are doing. Yeah, and that's just kind of across the board in the deaf community from what I gather. And CHS is, they're excellent at working hard to fill that gap, but there's really only so much they can do. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Chantal, and we appreciate that acknowledgement, and are really pleased now that we do have an internal staff member as well that will be available for, you know, some opportunity, even to some degree, right, to support in any way. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And Lucy.
Thanks, Amy. Thank you for the presentation. I have a couple of comments and one question. My question is, I have not used any of the facilities, the recreational facilities in Kingston yet. I came from Edmonton before, but in Edmonton, the pools had accessible changing rooms and paths and stairs down the water and everything. But the one thing that I had a lot of hard time doing is using the lockers. And so it was silly, like everything was really accessible, but the lockers were difficult for me to use. So it's something that might be something that to think about in the future. The question is, do you have in any of your water facilities, pools or anything, any time when you have dedicated times where people with disabilities can use that space, you know, without being with the public at large? I've noticed that sometimes it's really difficult, not just from a shyness perspective, but from just the crowd. It's hard for me to swim and to be, you know, aware of everybody around me and people just running into me, etc., without paying attention. And so I was wondering if there was any place, any space, or any time that that was available for this. in general. That's
Thank you. Thank you, Lucy. And yeah, so our lockers, we have uppers and lowers available at Artillery Park. And in terms of dedicated, swim time, we do have the therapeutic swim time. It's dedicated 5 days a week. I don't have it the exact times, but if you go on our website, Lucy, or reach out to me, I can share that program with you. And so that would be specific to our adaptive programs, and it's identified in the menu as therapeutic swims.
Excellent. And which one was this again? Sorry.
Artillery Park.
Thank you very
Aquatic
much.
Center. Thank you, Lucy.
Great, thanks. I think Susan was next.
Great, thank you. And again, thank you so much for the presentation. My question just is generally, with all, it sounds like there's a real dedication to a range of accessibility services, both in terms of programs and special events. And I'm just wondering, because I haven't looked for a while, when the city is promoting these events, is there accessibility information on what surfaces are offered, or what you had mentioned the accessible parking, because I just know from a personal standpoint, sometimes that will affect whether or not I would attend an event. And so sometimes it's really important to have that information. So I was just wondering if that's included on all the materials you use to promote.
Thank you, Susan. Yes, absolutely. So we don't just know whatever the programming menu is. So I'll give you an example. In our Snow Much Fun event, we did have a story time with Mayor Patterson, and it was a holiday book regarding like winter festivities. We did know on our website that we would have an ASL interpreter on site for that event, and shared that in advance. Anything that we can do to know any of our ways that we are accommodating, we will put that in our events and on our webpage, and then as well have it available on site on signage when you arrive at the event. Thank you.
Okay, and next have Dinah, then Janice.
This is a question about Artillery Park, Amy. I don't know if it's changed, but I haven't been there probably in almost a year. But I know when I was attending Artillery Park for swims, I think it was Caroline that was there then for accessibility. And at that time, or a year or so before that, I'm a wheelchair user, and I wasn't able to access the lockers. So I was showing how we'd be able to access them better, and they'd cut benches back for the lower lockers so that I could wheel up to them. So I'm not sure if they're still like that. Hopefully they are, so that the accessible ones, I could wheel my wheelchair right up to them. So they had adapted them and stuff, which was really helpful. And I just thought, if they are still like that, that maybe that would be something that would be of interest so that people would be aware of that. So if you were able to mention how that is accessible.
Thank you, Dinah. And it's great to know that you are using our facility. And hopefully what we could do with that is, yes, so the benches are still adapted that way, and it is capable, right, for the lower space. But I think based on the previous comment in this, perhaps what we should do is increase our signage, right? And on our website. So we could add a piece on our website that notes that our lockers are also easily accessible. So we'll note that for sure as a takeaway, and then some identified specific signage as well in those change rooms. So great idea, and certainly something we will take away. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks. And Janice?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. It's been great. Amy, I'm a big user of most of those recreation facilities you've mentioned. I love the therapeutic swim. Lucy, it's fabulous. There's nobody in there. It's really, really wonderful. I also use Vista quite a bit. I have a son that plays a lot of hockey, so I'm up there quite a bit. And I work at Portsmouth Olympic Harbor, so I use that facility quite a bit. And my comment would be, coming from the Built Environment Working Group, I now know that there's two types of parking spaces, and I believe, I wouldn't swear to it, but most of these facilities don't have the type of parking space that has the hash marks beside the handicap spots that gives you the extra room to drop your ramp. So I've had many occasions where I've been trapped that I can't drop my ramp and I have to get somebody to move my car. So I could make suggestions, being one who uses these spots, that I believe Invista has a whole bank of these handicap spots, but I don't believe one of them has and I believe it's type B. Susan, knock your head. It's type B that has the hash marks, right? Type A is just the big spot. Type B has the hash marks beside it, right? Doesn't matter. Type A, type.
Yeah, all the new accessible parking would have an access aisle associated with it. And
so, and I realize these are some older facilities. The one at Portsmouth is bad in that when it gets busy at Portsmouth Olympic Harbor, there are a bunch of 4 accessible parking spaces, and I usually park on the outside one so I can drop my ramp. But when it gets busy in the summer, people park beside me all the time. So again, probably all you'd need to do is paint the spots beside the accessible spots to say no parking, and people probably wouldn't. I mean, that doesn't prevent people from parking there, but it would help. So that's my only suggestion about parking at all these great facilities that I use and love very much.
Thanks so much. I'll take that suggestion back. Much appreciated.
Okay, any questions, further comments, questions from the committee? Seeing none.
And Amy, I'm not seeing any hands up from the member of the public here, so I think the business item is probably done.
Perfect. So thank you both, Amy and Amy, for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Pleasure to be here with you this afternoon, and thank you for your time as committee members.
Okay, so we will move on. Sorry, I lost my agenda on my screen. We will move on to 7B, business item, the 2022 accessibility plan status update. And there is a report provided as well. Not sure who is speaking to that. Oh, Janet, there, I see you. Thanks, Janet.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. I'm glad to be here today to introduce this report. Excuse me. The Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, or the AODA, and its regulations require that municipalities prepare a multi-year accessibility plan, make it available to the public, and to consult with the Municipal Accessibility Advisory Committee regarding the plan. Members of this committee who were on the previous iteration of the committee will remember that we did recently come and consult with you on the preparation of the new 2023 to 2025 plan. Because the AODA also requires annual status updates on the accomplishments achieved and the progress made in terms of meeting the objectives of the plan, we're presenting this report to MAC today to communicate the process that's been made in 2022 on the 2018-2022 multi-year accessibility plan for the City of Kingston. So this will be the final update on that 2018-2022 multi-year accessibility plan, and the next update that you'll be receiving from us will be based on the initiatives that were identified in the 2023 and 2025 multi-year accessibility plan. So I'll keep it short today, Madam Chair. I'll conclude my introduction, and through you, I'm pleased to answer any questions that the committee may have. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Janet. Did anybody have any questions or comments for Janet on the attached update? I am seeing none. So there is a recommendation to go with that report. So the recommendation is that the Municipal Advisory Committee recommends to Council that the 2022 accessibility plan status update attached as Exhibit A to report number MAC 23003 be received and made available to the public via the City of Kingston website. So I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for that recommendation. I see Chantel and I see Janice. Thank you. And all in favor on that report? Perfect. I see everybody. Thank you. We will move along to our next item. So 7B we already covered with Luke, and 7C we had already covered with Amy and Amy. And so we will go now to 7D, which is the appointments to project teams. So there were 3 plus the addendum. So there's 4 different project teams. So we'll go through them each individually and then ask for a mover and seconder once we kind of fill those positions. So the first one is the Oak Ridge Park playground improvement, and we're looking for 1 appointment for that.
And to provide some background, this is actually, the construction's been completed. It's just somebody would need to be available for a final review of the construction. So it's a very short term, probably 1 meeting.
Perfect. Chantel? Volunteering for that, or did you have a question?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I'm willing to volunteer for that.
Perfect. And the next one is the Bert Mounier Common West and Max Crescent Park. We are looking for 2 appointments for that one.
And this one, Amy, construction has started. So there would be likely a mid-construction review and then a final review. So about halfway through the process.
Any volunteers for that one? Susan, thank you. Anybody want to join Susan? Chantel? Perfect, thank you.
That's probably the extent of what I can volunteer for.
And then our third one is Terra Verde Park, looking at 2 appointments. Any context? I guess it's in the...
Sorry, for that one, as well as Creekside Valley, those are both very new. So you would not have much of a commitment off the start. It would just be introducing the general concept, and work would be coming further along over the next year or 2. And again, Madam Chair, if people are unavailable, we can bring these forward to the next meeting, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Lucy, I see volunteering. And I'm happy to jump on that park project too. And then our 4th and final one was in the addendum. So it's the Kirkpatrick fountain restoration, and we are looking for 2 appointments for that one.
Oh, so my apologies, Amy. There was an error
Sorry.
I made on the addendum. It should be the Creekside Valley Park. I think I had copy and pasted something incorrect. So the correct document is there. It was just the incorrect title in the addendum.
Gotcha. Yes, I see that.
Yeah,
That is Lori's
so.
project, Creekside Valley Park A and B. Looks like it's Remington and Westbrook area, and Creekside and Brookdale area.
If we need to, Madam Chair, we can bring this one back to a future meeting when maybe there's some more members here as well, because I think they're just starting public engagement on that in the next month or 2.
Okay.
Or if people change their mind and suddenly become available, they can always email.
Okay. Any volunteers at this point in time? No, totally fine. Okay. And so if we can get a mover and a seconder to basically approve all of the people we have listed to those appointments. And I see Dinah and Nicholas, thank you. And all in favor on that? All of those appointments go through, thank you. And business item 7E is appointments to the Awareness and Education Working Group. And was this just they were added after?
Yeah, this was just confirming Dinah and Penny being added as they were not the last meeting. So this is just need a mover, seconder, and then we are done that business item.
Okay, perfect. So as Derek said, can I get a mover and a seconder? Andrea, thank you. And I see Darcy's hand as well. And all in favor for that? Thank you. And thank you, Dinah and Penny, for joining that awareness and education working group. So moving along in the agenda, 8 is motions. We don't have any. We also don't have any notices of motion. Is there any other business? Not that I'm aware of. And so part 11, A and B, can we treat them together?
It's just correspondence that was shared with the committee as an item of communication. So technically there's no discussion. So it's been received and you can move on to the next item.
Okay, perfect. So just make a point of that correspondence that has been received, again, 11A and B to the committee, and then moving on to the date of our next meeting, which will happen in May. So that's Thursday, May 4th at 1 p.m. So it is in a few months for that one. And then our final item is adjournment, which I do need a mover and a seconder to officially adjourn. So if I can get mover, Chantal, I see your hand, Nicholas, thank you. And those all in favor to adjourn this afternoon. Perfect, thank you. Thanks everybody for joining us.
And just a reminder for members of the Awareness and Education Working Group, we'll have our meeting right here. Anybody who wants to stick around, you're welcome to. But yeah, the working group members, we'll meet shortly.